Hey, welcome to the podcast, Jose.
Hey, happy to be here, Asher.
For anyone who doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
Who do I say I am? See, this is why I told you to give me something to prepare for, man. This is off the cuff. Who do I say that I am? Um, man, I'll just say that I'm a humble servant, man. Um, obviously we know each other because of our faith. Um, and but I like to remain that, just a servant of whoever is in front of me. I like to serve in any capacity that I can. Sometimes it's with my gifts and talents, and sometimes it's just by doing, work around the house or things around my family. And so I like to consider myself a servant.
I like it. And tell me a little bit about where you grew up. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born in a little place called I'm gonna pronounce it in Spanish. It's called Huajumbo, but
Mm,
it's in Michoacan in Mexico. So I was born there and back in 1988, so I'm 36, and um, I was born out there, and my mom and my grandparents raised me out in a ranch in Mexico. So, and then my dad he had come to the United States. He had settled in a little place called Los Banos, California. And then from there, he brought us being his wife and kids at the time, which was my 6-year-old brother and 4-year-old me. So then we settled in a little place in the Central Valley. And from there, that's pretty much where I grew up until I was 18. So grew up around farmland, smaller town. I think at the time it had a population of maybe like 32,000. But since then, a lot of the people from the Bay Area have it's grown as a result of the outpour of the commuters from the Bay Area. And so from there, um, graduated high school, and then I moved out to a little place called Turlock, and then moved out to Vegas for a couple of years, came back, and I've still been here in the Central Valley in Northern California.
nice. How do you like it over in that California area?
I love it, man. A lot of people, there's a lot of politics out here. Obviously, I think California is a huge economy,
Hmm.
and it's very, I would say that the weather's very desirable. So right now, I love it, man. In the mornings, it's nice and fresh. By midday, taking off the sweater, fleece,
Hmm.
whatever. And but I love it. We're 90 minutes away from the ocean, so San Francisco, Monterey, about yeah, 90 minutes away, and then Yosemite's 90 minutes away. So,
Oh,
you can
wow.
get the best of all seasons. And so we're right in the middle.
Yeah.
Cost of living hasn't gotten too crazy. But yeah, man. I can't really see myself living anywhere else, at least for the time being. That could change, but
Yeah.
I love it here, man.
That's good to hear. It's like maybe following the news or listening to other people, it seems like everybody's making a mass exodus to out of California. But of course, like you have to have some people that still stay and find things there that still serves them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I can see why people would leave. And honestly, I think that's the beautiful thing about living in the United States is that whether or not you agree with the local politics or the state politics, right? You can
Mm.
move to a different state, a state that allows this, a state that doesn't, right? Now with just kind of the political climate in which we're in, there's you have the choice, do you want to
Yeah.
live in a blue state? Do you want to live in a red state? And, for me, it's home. So regardless of whatever it is that happens, I'd rather just kind of stay and deal with the, with the stuff that's going on.
Right. How I
It
guess
could
what
change.
was yeah, that's true. What was family like for you growing up? Like what was school like? Did you like school or did you keep a close knit group of friends?
Yeah, man. So growing up, it's interesting because again, I mentioned I was born in Mexico, but I'm one of the fair skinned Mexicans, right? So often confused for Italian, Portuguese. And so I was able to get away with a little bit more, I would say, than, or not a getaway, because it's not like I was really in trouble, but like it was more so. I think I had a very I had it I was friends with just about anybody, right? And so it was easy for me to blend in, or to, just to make friends. And so, and it's funny too, because a lot of people, once they got to know me, they're like, "Man, you're Mexican?" You're like, "You don't seem Mexican." I'm like, "I don't know what that means, but whatever." But yeah, man, it was really easy for me to make friends. Obviously, I'm very social, and that's kind of like what it is that I just I just thrive in, is just being in social interactions, and meeting different people. So yeah, I had a lot of friends growing up. I had some good friends, had some not so good friends. And what I mean by that is, like, or I had good influences and I had bad influences, right?
Mhm,
There wasn't any bad friends. But yeah, man, so it's as a very easily influenced young man, uh who it is that I kept around was very important, and sometimes it led me astray.
mhm,
So, I had good grades up until high school. High school, I kind of got caught up with just different people, and, kind of led me astray. But overall, I'd say I was a pretty good student, as long as I applied myself.
mhm.
But once that application kind of went away, then you know, I just everything else kind of went with it. So,
Right.
but yeah, I'd say that I was a pretty good student, but I was also very hands-on, and just
Mhm.
I learned differently. So, but yeah.
Gotcha. I guess, was there anything in particular you liked about school, or did you feel like it was for you?
High school, not so much. I think I was there for. I think while I was there, I made friends, and it allowed for me to build up my social skills. But it wasn't up until, I would say, after college, that that I found that school just wasn't made for, or I wasn't made for the traditional school,
Mm,
right? So then I got into a trade. So I have a background in HVAC, and that was a
okay.
little bit more hands-on, and something that I would have never expected growing up. But yeah, I found myself able to thrive in that hands-on, on the job training type of environments.
Mm.
Yeah.
How'd you, come across HVAC of all things?
Yeah. So I had a friend of mine who we pretty much grew up maybe a mile away from each other. So again, I mentioned I grew up in Los Banos, out in the country,
Mhm,
and so out there we didn't have too many neighbors,
mm,
right? Like it was we were the kids of the people that were agriculture workers, right? And
mhm,
so not too many neighbors, but one of my neighbors that I grew up with, we always we got into some trouble together, but then we always were, to this day, we're actually really good friends. But yeah, he got into the trade, and he said, "Look, man, I don't know if you'd be interested, but bless you. But we're doing something, like, I'm in this trade school, might be a good thing for you to do." And at the time I said, "Well, why not?" Right?
yeah,
So I got into it, not really knowing what I was going to do, and I was studying business at the state school here at CSU Stanislaus.
mhm,
And so from there, I happened to enjoy it. Like, I like being in the trenches, if you will, right? Like, just kind of getting my hands dirty, but at the same time, there was a huge upside to it. And what I mean by that is that there was a lot more that I could learn,
mm,
and then also take those skills and do side work with it. Or um, there was I just saw the world a little bit more different, and it
yeah,
wasn't like, "Hey, let me lecture you on business, because one day you're going to do business," right? It
right.
was like, it was more so like, "Hey, this is the trade,
Mhm,
this is what it is that you're going to be doing, and this is how you could do it in a large scale." but
Mm,
you're already doing what it is, right? So you're
right.
already getting your hands dirty. As opposed to the traditional school, which I felt like I was being lectured, and it was like, well, when you get to the right to
Right.
this position, now you're gonna have to do that. So so yeah, and then uh interestingly enough, this is my first year where I'm an instructor of that trade school. So the trade school that put me through my apprenticeship program, and definitely put me on a better path. Right now, I'm blessed with the opportunity to be able to pour into some young men, right, and kind of get them along their way. So it's
Nice.
yeah, yeah, it's a little surreal, but it's also very it's a little rewarding,
Mm,
and I kind of got into it more so just to be able to do that, right? To kind of pour into that young version of myself
mm,
that didn't really know what it was that he was going to do. So,
right. I like that. I feel like I kind of relate to you in a similar way to where I liked school for the most part, going through it like high school. It, doing a little bit of engineering there got me into engineering school. And then the more I did it, the more I liked it. And I started at a smaller school before I went to a bigger school. And I liked the practicality of the smaller school. And I couldn't really tell the difference what people meant by like, okay, this is theory based and this is practical based until I got into it and it's like you're just doing more and more book work. And then it's like,
mhm.
okay, are you going to go to graduate school? Or are you going to go look for a job? And it's like, I think I'd rather go look for a job. I didn't get the grade that I needed to go into graduate school to have some classes double count. But then once you're in the field and you're getting to see, okay, this is how they wrote up the procedure of how you build a flat bottom tank. So it's like, wait, how are you going to join three pieces of metal together? They're supposed to like one sits on top of the other and then you weld in between them. But then when it's like you've got three coming together, it's they've got to go in a sequence to where you don't have any weird warping. But being able to like read it, it just didn't make sense. And then I finally got on site and I saw the guys doing it and I was like, oh wow, like obviously I'm not having to perform that work, but like even knowing how welding works and being able to see it, obviously with the protection and all that, but like
Yeah,
being actively there, being able to put your hands on something, it makes it so much more real. And it's like, oh, like I can start this today and I can take it this far. And that just makes sense to me. So I definitely identify with you in that realm.
yeah, man. It's completely. I honestly, I wish there was a little bit more of that in school, right?
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of things that just didn't make sense to me, right? Like, okay, cool. Why are we learning this? How does this apply? How are we going to use this in in our lives? And but I think that piece of it is super important, right? Like, and there's very few teachers, at least in my experience,
Hmm.
that were able to bring what they were lecturing to life. And
Yeah.
those were the ones that I was like, oh God, thank you, right? Like,
Yeah.
thank you for showing me how this thing works, right? You
Right.
brought
Right.
it down. And so, um, yeah, man, I think that piece of it is kind of what's missing in our education system of bringing real life examples of what it is that you're teaching, and then
Yeah.
as a student, it doesn't always make sense,
Yeah.
and okay, how do like let's say that well there's three layers at some point something's going to have to happen and then what happens if right there's some uh bulges in the welder it doesn't get welded right and then that's going to mess up the next layer or what does that look like
Right.
you're going to
Right.
have questions along the way and I think that there are questions that are answered along the way
Hmm.
as you're doing it right so yeah that's a good point man.
I think it's like seeing I found this channel on LinkedIn and they put a lot of engineering projects together where it's like they'll time lapse it and you basically see like this
Mm,
massive thing being moved into place and it's like oh yeah that's that's why I do what I do and being able to being able to kind of see dirty jobs, like the show with Mike Rowe. I like that type of thing, and it kind of gave me an appreciation for getting to work around a lot of people of the trades, where it's like you have welders that kind of double as mechanics, or drillers that double as mechanics, or people that
Mm.
are willing to do the jobs during the wintertime and the summertime, where it's like you get out there and you just kind of work and toil away. No one's really looking at what you're doing, but you know that it's important because it gives people power to their homes. It gets them, if you're building roads, it gets them from point A to point B. It might be inconvenient, but you're kind of happy when the roads get repaved and it's not like, man, this road really sucks and you got to drive it every day.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. I mean, me personally, I feel like the trades was just something that I completely overlooked. I didn't even consider it, right?
Hmm.
I think in high school, some type of program, man. I can't remember what it was called, but I wish I would have dabbled in that a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Because um yeah, I mean, and you'd be surprised how many people like how much money people make in blue collar trades, you
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
in regards to like electricians and HVAC, I mean, they're pretty high up there, man, as far as pay.
Yeah.
And with not, I mean, there's some people that have to go through an apprenticeship program or whatever, but like even then you're not coming out of school with a $100,000 in debt like you would be
Right.
with a bachelor's degree in something. So, but
That's so
I guess
true.
it's not for everyone, but
Yeah.
again, I don't think that it's promoted enough. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do now that I'm involved in my trade school is just to be able to hopefully get in touch or at least reach out to more people and let them know that it's an option.
Yeah. I think like if somebody would have brought it to you in high school, do you think it was kind of looked down on, or was it just like, that's not for me? Or,
Yeah, I think you don't know what you don't know. And at the time, like it wasn't something that I was probably even looking at. So even if it
mhm,
was, you know, uh presented to me, I probably wouldn't have had the eyes to see it. But I think, yeah, I think the way that I was, who knows, man? I think it was just the programming that I had. But
gotcha.
I think at the time, the programming that I allowed myself to be running under was the programming of you need a degree,
Yeah.
right? You need a degree in something. And as an immigrant, right, as
Yeah.
somebody who came from a different country, um, you kind of don't know what it is that you're getting into. So you're just going off of what people are telling you. And
Right.
hey,
Right.
like my parents would tell us like, hey, we're busting our tails so that you guys can have a better future. That
Right.
better future includes school.
Yeah.
So continue to go to school, get good grades, and it was like, and be on your way. So
Yeah.
from there, it was like, well, what do we do after, and what does that look like, right? So we didn't
Yeah.
really have, if we did have questions about school, it's not something that I could have been like, hey, Dad, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this school? Or you know, he was
Right.
just like, just get good grades, just keep going to school, and then you'll figure it out. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, um, but yeah, man, it's just I think it was just the programming that I had that I thought that I needed a degree to be successful.
Right. Right. And I feel like that's kind of a unanimous immigrant story, where it's like education is the thing that you see as a way out, because a lot of times it's that maybe we don't get to see the money in the trades, or like farming, or like where how you grew up. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if you don't really understand like economy or markets, or like what's the value in being able to provide a service that's like a talent that you have, it's easy for you to do, but not and it's also needed. So it's like people talk about passion, passion, passion. And one of the things that I usually do on Sundays, like around the time that we're recording this, is like one of the things that I got from the prayer line was the M series call. And it's usually like an executive coaching session between like a group of 10 guys, where you have one person leading it out, and we'll get a lot of homework. Like obviously, maybe around like 9 p.m. Saturday night, you're getting like all these homework videos or resources that be like, hey, check this out, check this out, check this out. And we'll talk about it 8 a.m. Eastern time in the morning. And then we maybe go from like 8 to 10 or 8 to 12, and kind of give the guys on the West Coast a little bit of leeway, trying to get you in there. But one of the things we got from it, which is a book I started listening back to, was The Algebra of Wealth by Scott Galloway. And
Oh,
what I
yeah,
you writing it down?
I sure am.
Gotcha.
As you can tell, any book that's recommended, I'm like, I'm getting it. You
Yeah.
said it's the algebra of wealth.
Yeah.
All right, I
I
got
think
it.
the letters are in green and it maybe has like a quarter on it with like stacks of gold or stacks of gold looking coins next
Who's
to
the
it.
author?
Scott Galloway.
Scott Galloway. Got
Yeah.
it. Sorry to interrupt you, brother. Go
No,
go
no, no,
ahead.
you're good. I think it's good to actually repeat it. Like I think I saw him on a off of an interview of Diary of a CEO. I think it's like DOAC. And it's a British guy that does a lot of these interviews with his production team. And he does really good interviews. But anyways, in the book, I think one of the things he highlighted in the first chapter was understanding the importance of work and understanding that like you've got to do things that you're good at and like you are more what you do than what you say. And it's not about like, oh, you got to be passionate or do things that you love. It's like, no, work is work. And it's like sometimes it's going to suck, but if it helps you pay the bills, if it helps you make ends meet, if it helps you get to what you need to get to, you've got to do that first before you can start thinking of the luxury things. But present day, it's like we're being told that you just got to be happy and you just got to focus on your luxury and your dreams and your this. And it's like, yeah, you can have dreams and goals, but you have to put them in a framework to where it works. And you're not just like, just out here, like, just always trying to figure it out because it's like after a while, the window for figuring it out like keeps closing and closing and closing. And if you haven't given yourself enough like leeway to start stacking chips or putting things away or practice basic things that a lot of people have heard, but like we don't do because it's like, I'll just put that off till later. I'll put that off till later. It's like, no, like later is right now. And you don't have time to just keep going and just keep being like, I'll just see what happens. And it's like somebody else is going to make the decisions for you if you're not willing to allow yourself to kind of take charge.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And with that M series, are you talking about Barry
Yeah. Nemhard.
Imhard? Okay. Um, I just happened to jump on this last Friday on the line, and man, I think he just went on for what felt like 2 hours. I was just eating it up, man, and I was like, "Oh my God!" But he said something that I think applies to what it is that you're saying. But he said, you got to take care of your stuff, or your stuff is going to take care of you,
Mm,
right? Like you need to be on top of the things that it is that you're doing. Otherwise, those things are going to take charge of your life and what it is, you know.
yeah.
So that's what I got out of just kind of listening to him. But yeah, I need to get in touch with Barry because that there was a lot of what it was that he said, and I was at the gym, so I was kind of like in transition.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, how do I connect with you? But I know he's gonna obviously he's on the line, so I'm gonna have the opportunity to connect with him. But I'm
Yeah.
looking forward um learning from his experience because he's a very, I mean, I'm just like a student, just like see, and then there's a different, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
back to the school part of it, when you're in school, like some of the teachers, I'm like, man, like what are they talking about?
Right.
Like with
It's like they're
somebody
just
like Barry,
lecturing you from a book. But for him,
yeah,
it's like there's
man.
that practical experience because it's like he spent years working in HR, like in a corporate level. So he understands it's like, okay, I'm the person that brings you in, that hires you. So it's like, here are the metrics by which we measure employees. And it's okay, this is where you can be stuck for 20 years, or you can like stair step your way, make lateral moves and be like, okay, well, how is this going to serve me? And I think one of the things that he said that's kind of like with the M series, the three things are that it's about mindset, motivation, and money. And the
Mhm.
order is important because it's like if your mindset isn't right to be able to receive the information that's coming your way, then it doesn't really matter. Like you could be, we were talking this morning and it's like, at his church, they wanted him to um, they wanted him to do a presentation about they wanted him to do a presentation on money of all things. And it's like as they're doing it, as he's starting to talk about it or starting to prompt them, there's a lady kind of in the corner grumbling under her breath. And he's kind of thinking to himself, like, you don't have to be here. Like you volunteered yourself for this. And then
Yeah.
as um as the conversation keeps going a little bit, he tried to let people know it's like poverty is something that's kind of relative. Like this person could be making $50 million, that person could be making 10, or I could be making 150. So it's like to them, I'm considered poor, but it's like money, all it is really a tool or a measurement of like being able to meet your needs. But then currency is kind of the measurement of the relationships that you have, because like a lot of people say, it's not what you know but who you know. And it's one of those things when I think about even the job that I'm in now, like how I got here was based on who I knew. Like I still had to present myself and go through the interview, but the job was suggested to me off of a phone call, like reaching out to a friend to wish him happy birthday. We go way back from being going to the same school, being roommates and things like that. But it's like
Mm.
there's some level of trust there. And it's like
Yeah.
as much as he trusted me, I trusted him. And then in doing the work, it's like there's a sense of like I want to make sure that the work that I do reflects well on him to be like, hey, you made a good bet. And then also on my part, it's like after a while I have to stand on my own feet and be like, okay, hey, you're worthy of being here. And like what you contribute has value. You're not just like a pencil pusher or like a paper pusher, not a pencil pusher.
I got you. Yeah, man. And I would say I would add to that because I love that. I used to believe, and I still do, right? But
Mhm.
it's not what you know, it's who you know. But a little asterisk to that is it's not what you know, it's who you know, but it's what you know with who you know.
Right,
Because
right,
obviously you need to bring something to the table as well, right? You could
right,
you could,
right.
be uh have a relationship with somebody that's in a Fortune 500 company and you know them, but if you don't
Yeah,
have anything of value to bring them, well then it's going to be very tough for them to, right, for
yeah.
for that
Well
that
said.
relationship to for you to get something out of that if you're not bringing any skills to the table. So but yeah, they definitely both help, man,
Yeah.
so but I have seen a lot of people, and even in my life, man, I mean, it's been who I've known that's put me in some really good situations,
Mhm.
has also kept me out of trouble,
Yeah.
and I've just been blessed by people who gave me grace when I probably should have, received something else. So
Yeah.
yeah, that currency piece is huge, man. I
It's a
agree.
great point.
Yeah.
So it's like now what's 2024 been like for you?
Man, let me tell you. Uh, it's been good, man. It's definitely been a year of transition for me,
Yeah.
transitioning into just obviously we're continuing to work on ourselves, personal development, staying healthy. And it's at the beginning of the year, I started it because I'm on my entrepreneurial journey, right?
Mhm.
I do real estate, and then so that consists of wholesaling, as well as I'm a real estate agent.
Mhm.
And so in the beginning, I was a part of a partnership, and that partnership just I think we were just going in two different directions.
Mhm.
So a couple months ago, we just kind of went our separate ways, right?
Yeah.
Amicably, I'd like to think so, but I'm not sure.
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, so the year started off one way, and now things are going a little bit different.
Mhm.
So kind of just decided to stretch out my wings and kind of fly solo, right?
Yeah.
And so from the beginning of the year till now, yeah, there was I was a part of a partnership, and so now it's just me.
Mm,
Um, I did change brokerages, right? To anybody who knows real estate, I used to hang my license under one company, and now I'm under another. Um, and then I'm trying to grow a team as far as just the people who it is that are doing what it is that we're doing.
mm,
And and I got nothing bad to say about either the partnership or the brokerages. You know, it's just sometimes, and I think that's the hard part is um, making sure that nobody takes those steps personal,
mm,
right? It's just, hey, just sometimes there's you got to go in two different directions. And I think if more people learned how to take those hellos and goodbyes with grace, right? Like just the understanding of like, hey, I got to go this way.
right.
Hey, well, I'm gonna
Right.
miss you. You know, I hope all is well. And if you still need me, then I'm here.
Mm,
And I think that would prevent a lot of heartache. But um, and so that transition in my workspace, and then again, as I mentioned, I started to sub into the trade school,
yeah.
and from there, I was then offered a full-time position as a first year instructor, and and so that was new. Wasn't expecting that,
Wow.
but again, it just gives me the opportunity to pour into young men, which is because I'm not getting paid a whole, that doesn't necessarily come with a big salary or anything like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not why it is that I'm doing it either,
Mm,
right? It's to be able to again pour into young men that are kind of figuring things out, just need a little bit more guidance, I would say.
right.
So, but other than that, man, I mean, things have been amazing. I can't complain. Family's good. I'm seeing my nephews grow up. My daughter, she's 14 now. Looking forward to a quinceañera next year. If anybody knows anything about, the Latin culture, it's kind of like a sweet 16, but that's a big deal for her. So we're gonna make that special for her. And life's just life, and man, life's
Yeah.
doing what it is, you know. And so getting ready for man, we're in September. Next thing you know, we'll be at the retreat, man. I don't know if you're going, but I'm
Mm,
looking forward to that.
yeah.
And so just continuing to keep building, man, one brick at a time. So
That's awesome. I don't think I'll make it this year, but it was good to meet you last year and just to think of how much has happened in just about a year's time. It's like the roller coaster of going like from the highs to the lows to just being like sometimes you get in a funk where you're not sure if you'll get through it, but then once you finally do, it's like, oh wow, I came through that. And it's like I'd like not to be back there again. But it'd be good to kind of through journaling, which was another thing of like figuring out how to take that up and practice it in a way to where it's helpful and it doesn't feel like homework to where it's like, man, I can't stand this thing. But like being able to journal well enough to where I can read back what I wrote a year ago and be like, oh yeah, this gives me an insight onto what I can use today and like even expand on it or do more with it at a later time. I think that a lot has happened in a year. Yeah. It's
what about yourself, man? I mean, it's been a while since we've been in communication, but how's everything been for you? What's 2024 had in store for Mr. Asher?
it's been 2024 has been challenging, but it's been really helpful. Like a lot of things have kind of crystallized for me where it's like things I've worked through over the last 5 or 6 years have kind of come to a head to where I'm like, okay, like I'm not helpless how I thought I was. And the things that I thought, oh, I've got to go back through counseling or I got to go back through therapy. It's like even checking in with an old counselor, it's like, oh yeah, I did overcome this. Let me read my notes, some of the things that I wrote down. And kind of coming off the retreat, it's always nice to get around a group of healthy men where it's that you go into a retreat setting where you're stepping away from work, you're stepping away from family, and the main thing is you're there for 3 to 4 days, 3 to 4 nights, and like you're meeting people whose voices you've heard on a conference call and you're seeing them in person. You're like, wow, it's good to see you in person. And then you're eating together, you're sharing together, you're having messages that are being poured into you that really um, give you something to take on. And for me, coming out of it, or going into it, I was kind of happy to have it be a conclusion, so to speak, to like step back from a board member position to where I was like,
Mhm.
I don't want to keep I want to take some time away to kind of regroup and think to myself, okay, where do I want to be moving forward? Because work wise, the workload increased with where um, the friend that had told me about the job was going in a different direction. And it's like the work that we were doing wasn't slowing down anytime soon, but like learning to trust that we would get some help and not trying to compare myself to him, but like kind of understand that the role that I played still had its significance, but learning to think differently. And this is another book you might want is 10x is easier than 2x. Like getting that book here recently has been a way to think deeper on like the 80/20 principle where it's like doing focusing on doing less but doing it effectively to get better results.
Yeah. Who's the author of that? The 10x is easier
Uh,
than 2x.
I think it's Dan Sullivan and a doctor. Let me look real quick on Audible. I just don't want it to play as soon as I'm trying to look it up.
No, you're
But
good.
it's Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin. I'm not seeing it, but it'll be in like big bold letters. Once you look it up, it's 10x is easier than 2x. Basically thinking that like you really have to drastically shift what it is that you're doing. And I think it's maybe some people have said it's easier to make 1 million than it is to make 100,000. Like I haven't personally experienced that yet, but like trying to wrap my head around the concept, one of the things that the doctor that's one of the two partners in the book is he introduces the concept with the story of Michelangelo. And
Mhm.
until listening to this book, I never knew all that much about Michelangelo besides like, oh, he painted the Sistine Chapel. And then
I
it's
was gonna
like,
say,
oh,
besides him being a Ninja Turtle.
yeah, it's like those are the two
Yeah.
associations that I had to Michelangelo, but it's like the way that he became an effective artist was that he got into human anatomy and like
Mm.
dissecting corpses, which was like that was a big no-no back in the day. Like you're talking, I don't know if that's like 1400s or somewhere in the early thousandth century or the second century. And or no, I don't if you're 1,000 years in, you're not at 1,000. That's like the 11th century, whichever it is, one of those.
Yeah, but it
But
was
like
probably taboo, right? Because you're like desecrating a corpse. Like it's
right,
like,
right, right. So it's like he had to know somebody that knew somebody and be able to
mm,
get in and get out. But like his thing was that for some reason there was this obsession where he felt that in order for him to be able to display on the outside what was going on, he had to see the human body from within. So like
mm,
when you see the statue of David that he created or the statue of Mary holding Jesus, this like there's like so much detail that people are able to appreciate thousands of years later to where it's like it really took someone with a strict vision to be like, okay, everything that I'm chipping away from this block of marble is whatever is not the David or whatever is not that. So it's like learning how to obsess over that one specific thing to where it really shifted his focus. So it's like certain concepts like that it's making sense as I'm reading it or I'm trying to make sense of it, but I'm learning to do like maybe one book a day or like 15 minutes of the book and trying to sort through it. And then with work, I'm getting better about managing my time. It's like I've been 10 years plus into the construction industry, whether it's like you starting with doing field engineering, then you're focusing on a little bit of structural engineering, which is all like civil engineering based, which focuses on mostly doing direct construction building from like architectural structural plans to actually drawing the plans from the start or going to a fabrication shop and you do like things in piecemeal and then you ship it out to a site or you're requesting things from a fabrication shop to be like, hey, this is what we need scheduling to work with. And now I'm working on the stuff before any of that stuff comes into play to where it's like, what kind of ground, what kind of soil are you dealing with? Like, is this going to be a problem? Is water an issue? Like, we don't get earthquakes over in the southeast like you guys may in California, but it's like that's still something you've got to consider and make recommendations on. And it's like taking that one graduate class in college that was again by a professor that was someone very practical. He had that like um school experience but also like field experience and also traveled to conferences and things like that and still seeing that same professor's name present day, which is like I met this person 10 years ago and he was telling us about like 20 to 30 years of experience that he had. And he's still doing that in a way to where it's new and it's refreshed. And like
That's amazing.
everybody, everybody still knows him as like, oh, that's the cone penetrometer testing guy. Like that's his vein of field of study that he's done. And it's like,
Yeah.
it'd be cool to see him in person again. I don't know if he'd remember me from like the hundreds and thousands of students that he's had, but it's like, it's pretty cool to see that people know you for a thing because that's where you've kind of put your attention. But overall, I'd say to answer your question, 2024 has been it's been good. It's it's weird how the years kind of start kind of rocky and you're like, I don't know if I want to deal with this year anymore. And you just like, woe is me, kind of sad, and you kind of go through the roller coaster of like, well, I mean, I guess I still need to show up and do things, and and then you learn to let go of some things and focus your attention on what matters, like your health, like what you're eating. Go to the doctors for your checkups, even if you don't want to. You're like, well, nothing could really be wrong, but then you start looking into the mirror a little bit, you practice a little bit of self-love or you're like a little disgusted with like, okay, like all this weight, like it didn't just come here by mistake, but it can be shed away little by little. And it's like summer comes out, be more active, have an opportunity to be in the field and not just in the office. Being able to alternate the two it's been really good. And also getting help, much needed help has been pleasant.
And help, you mean in the sense of work?
Yeah, yeah, work wise. Like if you're sitting here staring at like obviously I'm not going to be able to do 25 projects by myself, but it's like, okay, there's only like three or four I need to focus on at a time where I can get help from, hey, this person can take three and that person can take two, or I can be here on this day and then a week from now, maybe we get five more projects. It's a good thing where it's like you have a revolving door every 3 to 4 weeks where you've got new projects coming in and you got to um, turn them around to say, okay, here's what you asked us for. Here are the results that we give you. And then it's like it's a constant thing where like it's someone's job to completely or continuously field offers so that you guys continue to make money and get paid. But it's like you have to do it. They have to weigh the risk and reward of like, okay, is the amount of attention we're going to give this, is it going to be worth the reward on the other end? And then if it's not, it's like you got to learn to say no to certain things and then do your best with what you can manage and still do your best to get out like a good timely product. And then when you're lagging behind, it's like, okay, like what went wrong or where was I kind of slacking? And it's like, where can I refine my process up a little bit?
Yeah, man, it sounds like we pretty much do the same thing as far as like in the trade, right? Like, 'cause it's exactly what it is. You just your product is just different.
Yeah.
But when I was in the field, because I don't, I'm pretty much full-time real estate right now, but when I
Mhm.
was in the field, like that's exactly what it was that we had to do, right? Is just kind of like do a bid, have work. And that's actually how I ended up falling into real estate is just after COVID, like those jobs just weren't lined up.
Mm.
And so we had a gap in the work that we had lined up.
Mhm.
And but yeah, that piece of it, like everything that you're saying is just exactly what it is that the projects that we took on. We did a lot of schools, a lot of prisons. And so it's just a lot of government work,
Yeah.
but that's that's exactly what it was that we did. I think personally it felt like a lot of overkill, right? You mentioned the earthquake. And
Yeah.
so we had to prepare for it's just like, dude, that unit's not going anywhere, dude. Like you could have a tornado come through here. That thing's still gonna be there. Might be the only thing that's there,
Yeah.
but it's here. So but yeah, it's just California. It is what it is. But
Gotcha. Did you get to work on, like, the installation of the HVAC units as well as the planning of it or the repair of it or maintenance?
yeah, honestly, I had that's the one thing that I'm noticing that I got pretty much training all around or experience, hands-on training.
Mm.
We did a lot of demo work, so we
Mm.
would have to rip out the old stuff, put in new stuff. So that was cool because it allowed me to see just, man, some of these units, they might have been like the first AC units ever. Like I'm like, oh my God, these things are just like it's like a bus that they
Yeah.
just put up there and it's there. And this thing is like ridiculously heavy. Um, but seeing just how far along we've come with the technology and stuff like that. So I'm like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we would do some demo work, and so it was like remodeling, and then also the new construction, and then you kind of got to see what it is that the foundation, what that looked like, and as walls were going up,
Mm.
and then what was expected, the amount of money that goes into just building a prison is
Mm.
insane, like, and then so that got me to thinking about like, man, why are we allocating so many funds to this?
Yeah.
How do we it's in the like because you got a lot of time to think when you're
Yeah.
by yourself, man. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
was, keep in mind, like I'm either on a roof by myself or I'm installing duct by myself, or every now and then I'll get some help and we'll work in groups, but
Yeah.
oftentimes it's just like, all right, Jose is going to be on the roof. David's going to be over here.
Mm.
And then so everybody's like, all right, break. And then so we all kind of, get to do our own thing. Um, so I had a lot of time to personally develop. So I was consistently listening to books and stuff, but
Yeah.
uh, podcasts and all that. Um, just kind of feeding my mind. But in that, you also have a lot of time to think about, like, man, okay, there was just a change order for this. This
Mhm.
cost that much. And you're just the dollars are just like you're like ching, like it's just
Yeah.
the revenue
Yeah.
off in your mind, and you're like, dang. Um, and this is going to again a prison, right?
Yeah.
Reactive, like, and yeah, man, just gave me a lot of time to think and reflect about like where it is that our taxpayer dollars are going.
Mhm.
Um, is that the highest and best use of them? And so it's it's just it's the trade's really, really interesting, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's funny how, like, that thinking can lead you one way or another, but, like, you have something to offset or feed your mind kind of towards the positive because I think for me, one of my biggest coming to Jesus moments was, being in Savannah, Georgia on a job, and I'm sitting there cleaning boiler tubes doing this co-op, maybe wrapping up the last semester that I had to work, and is basically looking at I've been doing this the reason it's called a co-op, it's like a 3-semester internship where you alternate between school and work, and
Mhm.
basically you work with the same company, and that gives you, like, a year of experience to where you can put it on your resume, you can put it, it works towards the like the technical aspect of your job, because like in college everybody takes classes, but it's like if you can get work experience, that's good on you. It kind of gives you a step up. It helps you stand out. But then you look at, okay, is this somewhere I want to come back to? Or like what's the difference between what I'm doing versus like a temp worker that's hired to do this for a job? Like you've got to clean boiler tubes off of basically what a boiler is. It's a big oven that you
Mhm.
use at a paper mill or a power plant to generate power, and they basically heat this thing up, and I think you run steam through the tubes, and
Mhm.
it basically it's an it's an engine where you use like heat to convert that into mechanical energy, and it helps kind of run the plant. And from time to time you'll get like scale and dirt kind of build up on it, so that's why you use a grinder, like a handheld grinder, to clean it
Mhm.
off. And you're sitting there, this is probably one of the biggest ones I'd ever seen. It was like 140 feet tall. And then they had scaffolding built in there to where you got to go in and like maybe clean a section of like 100 tubes or 40 feet wide and like 60 feet down. So you like walk up with your harness tied off and everything. You like go down, you clean it left, right, center, left, right, or left, center, right, to where you can come back and read it with a little transducer to get the thickness of the metal. Because what they want to know is how thick is the steel on this? Is it wearing down through the processes that we put it through?
Mhm.
And as
Mhm.
it wears down, it's like, what's the life cycle of it? So we can have somebody go in during a shutdown, read these tubes, and tell us, okay, this is the thickness or the thinness of your metal tubes, and it's good for another 5 years, or it needs some repair within like the next 6 months or something like that. And all you're sitting there while you're cleaning, if you can't have headphones in or anything, you just sitting there with your earplugs in. All you can do is think, because all you're doing is the
Yeah.
same repetitive work over and over. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, I'm not a bad person, am I? Like, like I'm
What
going
did
to
I do to
school,
deserve this?
right? It's like, but then it's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, it doesn't really matter like how you see yourself once you have that dialogue, but it's like, okay, this is how you feel, but what are you going to do differently about it? Like if you've been going to school for 4 or 5 years and you find that you haven't had any work prospects that are going to be better than what you're currently doing, like how are you going to um, move differently to have different results? And then it's like, oh, like I know somebody that's having different results. Let me talk to her. Let me ask her how she's able to do that. And then in
Mhm.
just asking the question, like, hey, how did you do this? Can you help me do that? It's like I got the right information. And then I had to go and apply the information and practice with it. And then when the next career fair came around, it was like, oh, that actually worked out. Okay. I'm going to have to miss a class because it's got to be this is where uh I was about to say this is where stuff hits the fan, but no, this is where like the application of what you said you've been wanting, it's got to be put into practice. And it's like, is this really work? Does this reverse interview process works? I'm going to go to these companies and interview them or ask them what is it that they're looking for, try to figure out like what is it that they want, because I can come here and like maybe try and sell myself or be like, hey, I'm this, I'm that. It's like you sound just like everybody else, but like, is there any interesting dialogue? Can you speak to, this is the experience I've had. This is what I enjoyed about it. I see you do this or that you're doing that. And it's like, oh, wow. Like I got more done in 2 hours talking to like 20 or so companies to where I got feedback back, and it actually felt like a useful amount of my time. So I may have missed like an hour or hour and a half class, but like that was directed towards work experience, like getting a job. Like you went to college to get a job. So you're at this fair to get that job. So this is another training and process to where it's like, oh, like that's what you're supposed to be doing. Like you didn't just miss classes because you had a party. It's like, no, you missed class to either get another class done or you missed class to get what it is that you're doing for that class. So there's just like a funny experience. But like you said, you have those times to think, and just that stuff just comes running through your mind, and you're like, okay, like having these thoughts, like what am I what am I gonna do with this?
Yeah, I think that time in solitude, man, I've learned to long for it.
Mm.
Like now, if I'm ever not alone for like too long, I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, I just need to like go for a drive, or I just need to go for a run, or I just need to be like, I need to not be around people.
Yeah.
Um, just because that allows for me to, I would say, not just block out the noise,
Mm.
right? Because everybody's trying to get something from you, or there's just that pouring back and forth, or right, wanting some time, energy, whatever. It's an energy transfer, in one way, shape, or form. And sometimes, like, I feel, I'll speak to my experience. I just need to like sit, right?
Yeah.
I just be still. And in that, not only does it allow for me to recharge, but it also allows for me to think about the things that are important, that way I
Yeah.
can go back. And then when I go back to the office now, I just come back refreshed. But there's something, and I tie it back to scripture, right? That's one of the things that I've been doing a lot more of, is just whatever it is that I'm learning. Okay, how does it apply to scripture? Or how does, do they match?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think about is is why did I mean, I'm sure Jesus was he was a carpenter for many different reasons, right? But like, there's something to working with your hands,
Yeah.
right? And there's something that allows for you to do, and that's something that I hadn't really, I had overlooked or didn't think. Again, I begin to miss it now whenever I don't do something with my hands for a while.
Mm.
And but while I was in the trade, there was just something about being able to focus, thinking about something and putting things together. And it was, honestly, it was therapeutic, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah.
Uh, so yeah, we do minimize that. And then there's times where I'll just do yard work, or I'll do something and it's like, I could probably hire somebody to do this, or,
Mm.
whatever. But then I'm like, no, actually kind of need it for me,
Yeah.
you know? And, so I don't know. I think that there's a lot of those things that figuring out the, not the risk reward, right? But like more so just the return on investment, and seeing how you're benefiting from that.
Yeah.
Because you get a great idea by you working with your hands, like that's a pretty good return on investment, that's a pretty
Yeah.
good use of your time if you're going to get some good ideas while you're doing that. So, and that's what it was that I learned to do while I was in the trade, was just okay, maybe I'm at the bottom of a building, or
Mm.
in an attic or whatever, but like, just kind of allowing my mind to do, to kind of come through for me, and for these ideas to come together, as I'm maybe not doing the most uh I don't know, luxurious type of work, right? Or the most
Yeah.
um but yeah, man, that part of it is just, I think there's something to that. I
Mm.
I don't know. There might be some studies on it, but I think that people that work with their hands tend to be, um, maybe not happier, but maybe a little bit more fulfilled. There's fulfillment that you get out of putting a
Yeah.
puzzle together, whatever, right? And then there's levels to that, but
Yeah.
um, no, that's good, man. That's
I f
good.
I feel good when I'm able to get out and cut the grass, and then I look back at it and I'm like, "That looks good. It smells good." It's
Mhm.
just like, ah. And I even got a little sweat out of it because the yard, of the house where I'm renting right now, it's not too big, so I'm able to do it with a push mower, and even getting the mower seemed like an
Push mower.
ordeal. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that small to where it's not that bad. If
Oh,
it
okay, okay. No, no,
Yeah.
no. My mind went to the ones with the little blades on it.
No, 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 not that. I
Okay,
thought
not that.
about that for a second, but then
Okay.
when I started even using this one, I'm like, "Oh, no, that would not have worked." I've only used that one time when I worked at a coffee shop in high school, and literally
Uh,
we had, like, a patch of grass right behind the cabin, and then, like, 2 like, a little piece on the side over here where we had, like, a little gazebo set up, a little mobile one, and then over here next to, like, a wooden fence area. So it maybe wasn't more than, like, 10 feet by 5 feet, so it's like a really tiny area. That's the only time I've ever used that, like, the mobile push mower, but this one's got the chute on the side where you just shoot the grass off, and,
got it.
being able to just run a couple passes to where like I cut it enough to where it's spread out to where you don't have big clumps of grass. It's nice. And then even being able to like landscaping was the very first job that I had, just getting
Mm.
out of the house with a family friend. And it is neat to see what you can do from like learning to cut the grass to learning how to plant flowers or plant plants. Where one of the ones that I think I like the flower just because of the name of it. It's called a lantana. And then you have like the pansies, which I'm sure it's not PC nowadays, but that's something that people would call people back in the day, which isn't all that long ago. But
Yeah.
when I actually saw that the pansy flower is a winter flower, I'm like, yeah, I don't think people understand what it actually means. Like in the same way that
Actually a
people,
compliment?
yeah, because it's like in the same way that people use like a derogatory term calling like
Yeah.
men women, it's like I don't think that kinda if you actually look it up, it doesn't go over how you think it goes. It's like you're actually paying them a compliment while you're trying to insult them. But it's
That's
neat
funny. I didn't know that.
neat little things like that where, like, I remember magnolia trees, and over here we have a lot of, like, pine trees, which I guess I didn't notice before, but when you have a hurricane come through, those have a really shallow root system. So they had a hurricane in South Georgia this year, and I think one maybe last week went through like Texas, Louisiana area, but I think both last year and this year it did a lot of damage because once that wind just came through, a lot of trees just like flipped over. So you walk by a house or something, you just see like this giant hole in the ground where it just like it's like something just turned the tree down and it just ripped everything up. And like some people had roof damage from last year that they still haven't gotten repaired. But I think
Oh
FEMA
wow.
had come down and they declared it like a national emergency or something like that. And I left over the weekend when we lost power, and coming back, I see these like giant semis next to the movie theater and like bucket trucks everywhere where it's like they basically had to replace a lot of the power poles and things and like cut the power lines down to be able to get people set back up with power. But it's like all these little vignettes or events that you have in your life, they're all starting to kind of like make sense. And like I got into personal development around 2013, 2014 when I was first getting into the workforce. And
Hmm.
I maybe read like nine or so, and I like have 100 and something now. And I was like, I didn't think I would ever be like my dad in that way to where I would consume a lot of knowledge, but now it kind of makes sense to me is like, oh, this is why a lot of people have like these book libraries. And like thinking back to books that I started with, I'm like, oh, it might be a good idea to go back and read that book or like start listening to it, whether it's like a book on boundaries or like what got you here won't get you there. Or
Hmm.
like one of my favorites that kind of got me started, courtesy of Eric Thomas, was the Who Moved My Cheese. And I was like,
I think
what
I
kind
have that right.
it's like, what kind of book is that? What kind of title is that? And then when I read it or even listened to it, I was like, wait, they make books like this? Like everything isn't just boring textbooks or like sci-fi super novels I'm not sure if I'll ever get through. And it's like, oh, this is like 20 pages and fun little story. And there's like an interview with the author after the fact. It's like, oh, I like this stuff. It's like I can get with this. This isn't too hard on me.
Yeah, man. I wish that somebody would have made learning as appealing as it is now.
Yeah.
Wow, that would have made a huge difference, you know? Like because when it's just like forced down your throat,
Yeah.
it could be the cure for cancer, but you're just like, dude, like why are like no, right? At least that's the way that I responded to it.
Mm.
Um, but if it's packaged in a way that's exciting, and I don't know, I think that's why there's podcasts have taken off, and just the whole edutainment space
Yeah.
is blowing up because it's something that it's okay, cool. Like this is the real life application of it, right? That
Mm,
time lapse. Like, dude, there's people that just like live on the time lapse, just seeing how things are built or how
mm,
things are coming down. Like I've done a lot of fix and flip projects. So it's like the before and afters, the time lapse of this. And
mm.
so it's um, like just seeing that in the real world or seeing its application.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I mean, I read that book. It was a simple read, right? But it was mind blowing nonetheless because I
yeah,
was like, wow, okay, cool. This is a very, very interesting way to tell a story,
yeah,
you know? And but it gets to the point.
yeah,
And, and there's so many other books too, um, that I've had to reread or um oh, you mentioned boundaries. I can't remember if that's the title of it, but that one was really impactful for me. Um, and right now I'm reading, man, I forget what it is. It's oh, I have to find it. You'll have to remind me. I think it's in my bag.
gotcha.
But yeah, man, like all these are worthy of revisiting, right?
Yeah,
Like I wish that, and now what it is that I'm doing is I'm just going back, I'm taking notes, and I'm like, I'm being a student as opposed to just reading the words on the page, you
yeah.
know, going through how do I apply this? Well, highlight this, and then, just
It's funny,
uh
I used to think that was almost sacrilegious to, like, write in a book, like, kinda thinking back to school where it's like you can't write in the
they were
textbook.
the library's books, right? Like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
weren't your books. So yeah,
Right,
you better
right.
write on them.
Like, I about freaked out once when, we were getting together for study for, physics, and, like, you have the books. Well, I guess technically it's your book because you buy the book, and, like, college textbooks can be expensive, but they had, like, a smaller library that was off campus where you could buy them a little bit cheaper, like 20,
Mhm.
40 bucks, maybe nothing over 100 or too bad. But,
Yeah.
like, it was physics 1 or physics 2, and one of my buddies that were sitting down getting ready to study, he like just casually takes my book, creases it, folds it over itself because it's a paperback book. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you can't
Yeah.
do that. Like, I'm trying to resell this book. I think that's what it was. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm trying to keep it in as close to new condition as I can to where if I don't need it, I'll just be like, here, take your book back. Give me, if it's half my money, I'll take that to be able to like save wherever you can save.
Dude, think about that though. You just said something. So, and I've thought the same way, but you were more concerned about the resale value of the
Yeah,
book than you were concerned about the information that you were getting and making sure that that information stuck.
right.
Wow.
Well, I mean, because
I've been there. Like I've
when
done that
when
too, right?
when you're in that again, back to the mindset thing, where when
Yeah.
you're in a place to where it's like, this is all I have, or I don't have all that much, and like every penny has to count. Like you've got
Yeah.
in Georgia, we've got like the Hope Scholarship, which is a financial aid to where if you're making a B average or better, then you have a portion of your tuition that's paid for, and a part of that sometimes is a stipend for your books. So it's
Mm,
like that stipend is only allowed per semester or for the whole year. So it's like if you run out of money for your books, unless you're going to be working a job, once you run out of money, that's it. Like there's no help coming from home to say, "Oh yeah, we're just going to cover this, we're going to cover that." Like I've had there's 6 living siblings in my family where we all went through college, and I was like 5th or 6th in the line,
mm,
and the the thing is, like, everybody basically made it on their own. It's like maybe growing up immigrant lifestyle, it's like you're lower income, so maybe you have more
mm,
things afforded to you, but, like, everybody kind of had to bust their butt and figure it out, and for me, engineering kind of worked out a little bit easier to where I think by my 2nd or 3rd year, it actually felt like I was getting paid to almost go to school because like I finally got that internship, which is like I could work a whole semester and use that money to pay for the school instead of like having to both work and go to school. And I always tip my hat off to those guys because I don't know how you can raise kids, go to school, go to work. It's like you have 3 different jobs that you're doing and you're just keeping them on rotation. And doing what you got to do to get the benefits of what you're there to get.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, growing up, well, when I was in college, um, that's what it was that I was doing, man. There was times where I think from 2019 to 20, no, maybe it was like 2017 to 2019, I was going to school. And so I was taking classes, some at the JC level, then I got to the university level, studying business, and then I was working and all while being a parent, right? So I had to take my daughter to and from school sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, juggling all those things it was a lot. I think that was the year that I also pledged for a for the fraternity. And
Mhm.
then like it was, man, forget what year it was, but it was a heavy year for me.
Yeah.
And and I think that was also the where I started learning more from YouTube than
Mhm.
I did from my professors,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because like, dude, I don't have time to waste like
Right.
at all. How do I get the information so that I can pass this? Like
Mhm.
there's zero emotions about this. Like I need to get this thing done. How do I get this thing done the most efficient way?
Right.
And so then I would, go to the old Google machine, and then so I would Google it, YouTube it, whatever, and then I would get my notes, and then but yeah, I think that was a turning point for me. Once I started learning more from YouTube than I did from my lectures, I
Mhm.
was like, hmm, wow, I'm paying a ton of money for this.
Yeah.
This is free,
Right.
right? I'm getting this for the information, and I'm actually learning more from over here.
Mhm.
Hmm, what am I really paying into, right?
Right.
And then so yeah, that kind of shifted my thinking a lot.
Yeah.
Because I was working and I'm over here chasing my tail, working around and doing all this stuff so that I can get a good grade in this,
Right.
right? But again, if you're after the information, then the information was over here. So,
Mhm.
uh, but I think it got to that point of frustration where I was like, man, what's the highest and best use of my time?
Right.
And that allowed for me to kind of make that shift.
Mhm.
But it's interesting, man. It's interesting how at least I'll speak to my programming or my how flawed it was,
Yeah.
and kind of undoing that. And I don't know, talking about book recommendations, a book that changed my life, and I've listened to it. I don't know how many times I've lost track, but each time it's just it reveals something different to me. Is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
Uh, man, it's everything about that was like, oh my God, like this makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Like just
I
and
think I
so
started it and I need to go back to it. And I forget if he wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People,
I
but
think that was Dale
Dale
Carnegie.
Carnegie. Gotcha. But it
I could be wrong.
I think you may be right. But
Yeah.
I think to your point, I may need to go back and listen to those two books because for some reason, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think it kind of like pricks my ego to where I'm like, I need to get over myself a bit, and in order to be more sociable, I need to I need to give up a little bit of what I want to become who I need to be to attract the right people and not look at it as like, oh, I'm putting on a character. It's like I have to really embody the principle of like, okay, how do I win someone over without like an agenda to be like, well, this makes me look like this, or if I do that, then this means me this about me. And it's like, maybe you don't really know what you think you know all that well.
Yeah, man. And I would say too that because I've naturally been a social person, and
Mhm.
I don't feel that I've ever really had an agenda. Which is funny because that's also one of the reasons why I avoided sales as much as possible. Like I
Mm,
avoided it like the plague. It's
mm,
funny because at one point I got hired on at the same time that I was gonna do the trade school.
yeah.
Uh, I had already gotten hired on to work for AT&T
Mm,
as a sales rep,
yeah.
right? But there was just something about sales, dude, that I'm like, dude, I just can't. I don't like sales, dude. I just don't want to. I don't want to feel fake, right? I don't
Mm,
want to feel like I'm coming to you. Um, with an agenda and I'm here to take something from you. And,
Mm.
like there was just like this, again, back to the programming. Like I was programmed to think that salesmen were bad.
So then
Um,
how'd you do real estate then?
yeah. Well, that time while I was in the trade, I
Yeah,
spent a lot of time learning about sales being one of the things,
gotcha.
right? And so, uh, oh, but to at the time I had already been hired to do AT&T, and then the
Right.
trade school came up, and so
Okay.
I was like, you know what? I already have this.
Mhm.
This is secure, and I'm already hired.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I think I'd rather work with my hands. So
Mm.
weird. Like, I don't know. I just felt called to do that. Like,
Yeah,
and I felt like I want to be away from that too.
gotcha.
But how I got into real estate was in the trade, right?
Mm.
You're breaking down walls, you're building them up, you're doing this, you're doing that. So I saw a lot of old timers, man. I saw a lot of people that were walking with limps,
Mm.
some that were they had fingers missing,
Yeah.
some that their back was just they complained about it,
Mhm.
right? They self-medicate afterwards, whether that
Right.
be what like um, whatever some substance they felt was necessary for them to feel okay.
Right.
And I'm like, man, like I don't want to be like I don't want that to be. That's what if I continue down this path, that's what more than likely is,
Right.
that's
Right.
what it's gonna look like for me. And I could do it because I can put my body through some punishment,
Yeah.
but I'm like, is that really
You're
the
still
best
young.
way?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I'm like, man, I should probably start thinking about something else. And then real estate, right, just happened to come up.
Gotcha.
Um, and so didn't really entertain it too much, but I'm like, well, there's a better way for me to do what it is that I'm trying to do, which is ultimately like leave it better than you found it, right?
Mm.
Like, and so that's what it was that I was doing in in the trade. But
Right.
then I'm like, well, I can do the same thing. Maybe I don't have to get my hands dirty,
Mhm.
right? Maybe I could do the paperwork, the behind the scenes, the finding the contract, the finding this, the finding that. So
Right.
back to all these things kind of coming together,
Mhm.
right? It's now that I have had the experience of getting my hands dirty, I'm like, well, maybe I can have more of an impact over here,
Mhm.
right? Doing this. And so inevitably I ended up falling on sales.
Mhm.
And in that, I had to completely change, number one mindset was
Mhm.
my mindset around it. And once I started thinking about me doing what it is that I'm doing as well, your heart, right? You need to kind of
Mhm.
like me talking to myself, like, hey, like your heart, you know that you're not here to, take from anybody. You're here to provide a service and you're here to help them get from point A to point B.
Right.
And so you and then in between there's going to be a fee which you rightfully earn, right?
Mm.
So you're providing a service,
Mhm.
there's a fee. Now you need to go and promote it, or you need to sell somebody on the idea of getting them from point A to point B. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. That's what
Right.
people do, right?
Right.
And so that like just coming to that not realization but just that aha moment of like, dude, I'm actually doing people, if I believe in what it is that I believe in,
Right.
right, wholeheartedly, that I'm making a difference, that I'm doing this, then I actually think that I'm doing people a disservice by not telling them
Mhm.
about the service that I provide,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so then at that point it just became a lot easier for me to talk to people about it, and
Mm.
I'm not out
That
like,
makes
hey,
sense.
you want to sell your house? Hey, you want to buy a house? Right? Like I'm not that dude,
Yeah.
but people know what it is that I do. And then at that point, like I can just kind of talk to, whoever. And but it's easier for me to man, it sounds like you're in a pickle, right? Or it sounds like you got a situation going on. Can you tell me more about it? And then at that point, it becomes easier to I would say transition from a like a peer to peer or just a friend to friend conversation, and then transition it into a potential business conversation,
Mm.
right? And it
Right.
doesn't have to convert, but just like, hey, if it was me, this is what I would do, right?
Mm. Right.
Or
Right.
this is at that point. But it feels like if you could just have a conversation with people, right? Then at that point, like what it is that you do is bound to come up, right?
Right.
And so you don't have to lead with that. And that's what I feel a lot of people do, and why a lot of people are turned off by salespeople is because that's all you know, that they're trying to sell you something,
Yeah.
right? And the really good ones get you to sell themselves to you, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
just, hey, you do what? Okay, cool. Here's, like, shut up and
Yeah.
take my money. Like, and so, how much does it cost? Like, what is it worth? Whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, I think a lot of that is just us getting in our own way as far as, like if you have the best um, engineering service
Hmm.
on this side of the United States, why wouldn't you be telling more people about it?
Right.
Right. And if you believe that you're the best at what it is that you do, then yeah, you're, back to the idea of the talent. You're like, you're no better than the person that's, putting their talents in the ground, or putting, like,
Right.
you need to go out and multiply it,
Yeah.
and use what it is that you have, your gifts and your talents, to be able to create more, not just
Right.
for you, but for those that need your what it is that you've decided to put your time and energy into.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that last part, that it's not just for you, because I think one of the other things Barry said this morning is that sometimes people think it's like, oh, I don't need all that. I don't need all that money, because money always seems like a dirty word. And it's like, it might not be only for you, it might be for the other people you're supposed to help. And it's like, okay, if you're just concerned on you today, you're not thinking ahead of like, okay, this would be maybe for um, I don't know if it'd be like your parents-in-law, even if you're not married yet, or this would be for your wife or your future kids or your great grandkids. And it's like, maybe it might be for philanthropic, like community thing that you have an interest in, but you're not thinking of, oh, like this can help this down the line and it can make more room. It's not, I have to be a bad person, or I have to have this like animalistic desire in my heart to only be able to get the things that I need. It's like, no, you can be who you are and still get your needs met. You don't always have to be a woe is me, like have mercy on me, man, I'm a sucker type mentality to like get through life. It's like that's not what makes you a good person, just because you're vulnerable and you can be easily taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, man, if I'm being honest, I think that's probably a reason why a lot of people, or I'll speak for myself, why I probably hadn't reached the level of success, like, because I would self-destruct, man.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that. Like, even the idea of like, well, people depend on me, or right, like, it's not for me, it's for
Hmm.
somebody else.
Right. Right.
Well, I probably I wasn't a best steward of everyone else, right?
Right.
And then,
Right.
so, getting to the point where you realize, like, yeah, man, you're doing this for other people, right?
Mhm.
You're like, you're supposed to serve with that. It's not self-serving,
Yeah.
And and yeah, man, I mean, money is a tool, and I think a lot of people just have I don't want to say flawed, but like, they just have a different relationship with money, man.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of undoing the programming of like money being taboo, money not being something that we talk about,
Right.
at family gatherings and stuff like that. But it's like, we kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
Like, money is necessary for absolutely, like, it's paying for the food that we're eating. So
Yeah. It
aren't
pays
we
for
talking?
almost everything but the air you breathe.
Right. You know, and I'm in California, man, so they might start putting a tax on that. I don't know. You know, but but yeah, man, it's I think it amplifies the person who you are, you
Yeah.
know. So it's I think for a lot, and again, I'll speak to a version of myself that wasn't ready for that. Um, it's a blessing to not have that kind of money.
Yeah. Wait, so that again?
I said it's a blessing to not have that kind of money, to where you have too much money to where now you're blowing it, right? Or now
Mm.
you're spending it on vices, or you're spending it on things that don't,
Right.
because now you're self-serving, right?
Mm.
And so I think that version of me probably would have, again, maybe not self-destructed, but gotten to a point where I would have mismanaged a lot of it,
Mm.
you know?
But now you have a better idea of what to do with more.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, it is a tool, right? The
Yeah.
way I see it now, and it's, well, this much, right? I start just to look at money as data. Like if you
Yeah.
have this much data, you have this much of this, then it allows for you to do this much of this, and
Yeah.
and so seeing it from like the perspective of, you made the comparison of like, was it currency and what was the other one?
Yeah. It's I think it's just money and currency, like being able to have the physical money versus currency being the relationships of the people that you know.
Yeah. And so, it's that money being a tool and using it for what it is. And,
Mm.
I talk to, some of my students about that, as far as like, think of the tools that you're going to be using, whether that be um, a drill, the hammer, like these tools, like it's a tool that
Right.
you're supposed
Right.
to learn how to use, so that you can, so that it can make you money, right? That's part of
Yeah.
um, the recipe that you need to do the work that you need to do,
Yeah.
right? And so it's the same thing with money. Um, is
And
just being able to use that to help get to where it is that you need. It's not the
yeah.
end goal, right?
Right. And it's funny how that works, especially when you talk about like a tool, like a drill. You can tell like different brands are meant for different things. Like one might be a more industrial brand where it's like heavy duty everyday work versus one might be more commercial, home based, something you can use around the house. You can use it on the weekends, but it doesn't need that much wear and tear. And you kind of see the price difference. And like similar
Mhm.
thing with a car, which is something that it helps you get from point A to point B. Like before, first car I ever drove was a 2000 Malibu, and it's like I drove it until it the repairs were going to cost me more than half the price of the car, and it's like I think it's time to cut it loose at this point. And I think that was maybe like 2011, 2010 to like 2015, 2016 to where I had to let it go. And then from that point, um, I upgraded. Maybe I was kind of struggling again with the money thing where it's like, okay, do I drive this Corolla or do I take this Malibu, this there was a Malibu initially, but I did I'll come back later. And then when I came back later, somebody came up behind me and bought it is a 2013. So then fast forward to a 2015 with like 9,000, 10,000 miles on it. I got it. And at the time I was trying to get like the best car for the lowest price. And you think maybe you spend 13, $16,000 on it. And it's like, hey, that's a great buy. Like maybe I could have got the Camry, which had like a little bit more room in it, but at least I'd researched that the Corolla was big enough to where like someone that's 6'2" can fit in it. You can put the seat almost down to the ground and you have enough leg room in there and stuff. And there was a little bit of buyer's remorse, but thinking about 8 years later, I'm like, wow, this was a good investment. Maybe I struggled to see how the money that I spent going to school or the loans that I took in order to get my degree, which was like coming out of college with like $20,000 debt, but then you're making enough money to pay it back within 3 years' time and building your credit and things like that. And it's like, okay, I have different examples of where I've been able to use the tool of the money. And maybe I didn't have that same emotional burden tied to it. And like another, maybe the last book that I'll give you is one that Barry introduced to us last year. And I'm thinking it's like, maybe I need to go back and read it. It's called The Psychology of Money. And
Oh yeah,
it kind of talks
I've read
about
that.
like how different people view money based on when they were born and what world events kind of took place around that time. So it's like you're kind of conditioned to believe certain things based on the environment in which you grow up in. So it's not necessarily saying that you're a bad person. It's just one of those things where it's like this is the reason you think the way that you think is due to multiple factors. And some of it you can control, or some of it just helps to be made aware of, like, um it helps to be made aware of where some of your thoughts come from. And it's like, oh, okay, that's that's not too bad. Like, I don't feel so bad to where, oh, I'm just an idiot, or I wish I knew this. And it's like when somebody points to a little bit of insight, and it's that, oh, okay, you mean I don't have to stay this way? Like, I've got an out, I've got another option, I've got something else I can point to, or somewhere else I can go to, and not be like continue to limp along and just be like, man, I'm having a rough day. It's a Charlie Brown morning, and then it's just like, woe is me. And it's like, you don't have to be.
Yeah, I think I think we've all probably thrown a pity party, right? And I know I have. But yeah, I think once you get to a point where you understand the programming that you received, learning that there are different programs that you can run,
Mhm.
and I think the hardest part is actually unlearning um some of the bad programming, because how do you figure out which one is going to serve you and which one's not? I should probably stop
Right.
using good and bad, but which one serves you and which one doesn't,
Yeah.
you know? And that's going to be, it's hard. It's hard because oftentimes we get this programming maybe that doesn't serve us from the people that we love. So we
Right.
associate it by being of service because it's coming from those that we care about or those that care about us,
Right.
you know? But when you can shift that from, well, maybe that's the programming that was necessary for them to get to, right, from there to where it is that I'm at. But
Yeah.
now this is going to require, I'm going to need to update my software, my programming to get to what it is that I need to.
Right.
And yeah, that requires unlearning a lot, man. That's So one of the things that it's a very difficult thing to do if there's emotions tied to them.
Yeah.
One of the books that really helped me out was Limitless by Jim
Mm.
Quick. Yeah, so that book, it allowed for me to back to tying emotions around memories,
Mhm.
right? So and they just made me think of that. But when you're able to attach certain emotions to things that you want to remember, well,
Mm.
then it's a way to get them involved into your programming, right? Same thing with like
Right.
traumatic experiences. The reason why they're there is because it was a highly emotional thing.
Mm.
So, um, and working through those things, it's something that's really, it can be very challenging and very heavy
Yeah.
depending on our life experience, But I think it's very necessary work to be able to um to do better, to just to progress, to grow.
Right.
We're gonna have to go through these uncomfortable conversations, and more than anything, like conversations with ourselves,
Yeah.
you know.
It's a great point. Man, it feels like we've almost done 2 hours. I didn't notice until I looked at the clock,
Oh,
and I was like, holy crap.
I know I didn't want to look at the clock because I was like, well, I'll just let it go. I don't want that to be anything that, kind of deters me or takes my attention away. But oh
Gotcha.
yeah.
But you've done phenomenal. I mean, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, man. I mean, I learned some things about you. I know I was hoping that you were gonna go to the retreat just to kind of catch up. I know when I went, it was the first time that I went, and so I didn't know what to expect,
Yeah.
right? It was let's just say that for me, there's not enough of those rooms
Oh, yeah.
that I can be in, even the ones that I pay to be in, right? Because I've been involved in like some masterminds and coaching and stuff like that. But when your beliefs are aligned
Yeah.
and it's just you're receiving wisdom, man, you're receiving testimonies, like
Yeah.
God that we serve is the same, and and it's the experience, and just uh I don't even have to like say anything, right? I mean, or interact, and just to be in that space and just to absorb it has been transformational for me.
Yeah.
But We'll have to you're in Georgia, you said?
Yeah, yeah, South Georgia.
Okay. Right on. I
Almost
actually need
almost
to
in Florida by like 20
really.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm managing a property out there. I forget what the name of it, but it's not too far from Atlanta.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to hit you up when I'm out there.
Gotcha. I'm gonna actually drive up to North Georgia next week and visit my mom and maybe pick up some things. And right now, I guess I haven't planned on the retreat just yet, but I keep thinking like one thing that a mentor of mine or a counselor kind of shared with me is that be open to everything and be open to anything and unattached to everything. So it's like right now it might be a no, but closer to the date it might change. But like being able to free myself kind of coming off of the heels of last year to be able to use no more frequently as a full sentence is like no's
Yeah.
can always become yeses because if you're always saying yes to everything, kind of like I did, and starting off 2024, it was a little frustrating because like within myself, I kind of came to a little bit of a resolve where it's like I need a break and I need to regroup. And like when people usually say I need to talk with my family and things like that, I would always feel like I couldn't do that because like I didn't like outside of my parents and siblings and things like that. I didn't have like an immediately new family that I'd grown, or at least that's what I told myself. But I was like, no, I do have a family. I'm like, I'm kind of a family or I'm a community unto myself. And it's like I've got to be able to check in with myself and be like,
Mhm.
just because I have the talent to do something, it doesn't mean that this is the season to maybe use that talent. And like where I'm becoming resentful or almost like regretful and trying to do something and I'm just trying to force something and my mind and body are just like, nope, not right now. And I'm like, come on, like you got to do this thing. You got, it's like, no, like sometimes it's not like you got to, but I think the following weekend right now, or well, I just realized the Monday would be like the election day, but the following weekend, a couple of friends from college, we've been getting up to go to a football game um, once a year, and that's I think that's that weekend, and that'll be in Atlanta. And initially, my thought was I don't want to because almost being in South Georgia and driving up to like East Tennessee is about like 5 or 6 hours, but
Okay.
it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to pigeon myself to overcommit, but if it works out or something like that, I'll see. And I've got podcasts kind of lined up that weekend to be like,
Mhm.
we'll see. I mean, it feels a little different from missing the first retreat where it's like you see the pictures and everything like that, and you're just like, man, I wish I would have been there. But then being other places or being where your feet are, been a it's been a process learning to appreciate where I am and even appreciate being missed and be like, man, okay, like I didn't think what I did mattered or I didn't think like anybody would notice. And and then someone just hits you up like, hey, where you been? What are you doing? What have you been up to? And it's like, oh, nothing. I just just hanging out, just chilling, not really getting into anything there. But we'll see what happens. Right. For right now,
Yeah, man.
it's a no, but no's can always change.
Yeah. And I've been learning to say no to a lot more. And I think that's kind of been a maybe not a theme, but it's just a reoccurring thing back to the
Yeah.
whole 2024, right? It's just learning how to say no to a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, and just this idea of like just because you can doesn't mean you should,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so, and that's yeah, it changes, depending on where it is that you're at, and just um, I'm just learning to. I have a tough time with committing to certain things. Like when you
Oh
hit me
yeah.
up like 2 months ago, I was like, man, what am I going to be doing in 2 months? And I was like feeling some type of way about it because I'm like, dang, okay, like because usually I'll just plan for the week or I'll plan
Right, right.
for just because the way that my schedule is, there's so many things that change, and so
Yeah.
if I were to have a schedule, like, dude, by the end of it, it's the majority, I'll be lucky if a couple things,
Right,
just
right.
um end up holding up. And so that's kind of just the way that I've been thinking about stuff. But yeah, I think just really committing to something, and the line has helped me out tremendously, right? Because it's like
Yeah,
I show up, and and so it's allowed for me to stay work on the commitment piece of it, because I know it's an area of improvement for me for sure.
yeah,
But but yeah, man, I mean, I think that part of it, of you being present where it is that you're at, just, whether you go or whether you don't go, you're gonna be fine, right?
yeah,
Like, and that this idea of FOMO, like, you're not missing out on what it is that you're like, because you're where you need to be,
yeah,
right, in that moment. So whether that's in a cabin in Tennessee, or whether that's, at in Georgia, it doesn't matter,
yeah.
and really just being present regardless of where it is that you're at, you know.
Right. I'll definitely say that the moments that the line is created have been almost magical in a sense, to where it's like doesn't matter if it's a casual conversation you're having or a deep conversation, or like just the opportunity to be around different people, exposed to different people you think you'd never meet before unless you guys are um, working in the same industry. Because I mean, it's like most of the people that I've met have been either through personal development, through work, or through school, or through family. Like those are the main five things. And it's like I hadn't met a whole lot of people just sitting in my room or just driving in my car by myself or
They're not
something
gonna
like that.
come to you, brother, you
No,
know?
you always got to
Yeah, you
go
gotta
out and
get
get
out
them.
there. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, again, it's easy for me to say because I'm very social, but, I've gotten into the habit of, even when I'm at the grocery store, whenever I'm just like, I'm coming across people, right? I always say
Yeah,
hello. A lot of times, right? Like, I don't get the response back, or I got people that just completely ignore me, but it's still continuing to do that because,
yeah,
um, like, part of that business shift that I had happened because of somebody who I said hello to at the gym,
yeah,
and it's just some of the most random interactions lead to something else, and so you never know who it is that you're going to that you're going to meet, and what you could do for that person, or what that person can do for you, right?
right.
What can come as a result of that relationship. So, I just I would encourage you to just put, even if, right, whatever it is that you're doing, just to continue to put yourself out there, right? You mentioned that
Yeah,
those 2 hours as you were meeting different people, interviewing and doing all that,
mhm,
like, it's those relationships, back to the currency piece,
yeah,
right? Like, you're growing that currency and the relationships that are around. One of my mentors, he says, the more hands you shake, the more money you make. And
mhm,
it's true, like, as long as you're continuing to go out there and put your best foot forward, and, saying hello to people, like, enough people are going to they're going to remember your face,
yeah,
and remember how it is that you made them feel, or, man, like, that guy, yeah, he seemed nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why that How to Win Friends and Influence People book is coming back into my mind currently, because it's like you can tell yourself that I can tell myself that I'm an introvert or that I don't do well in certain things, but it's like there's a there's kind of like a cap where you can only get so far doing what you've always done. And that if you don't learn to exercise that muscle of learning to communicate with people and learning to make yourself kind of available to be um how did they say this? It's like the better person you become, the more people line up to play with you. If you think of like being that little
Mhm.
kid, because like you're taught to like if you want to get into the kingdom of God, you've got to be like one of the children. And it's like you're
Mhm.
not being told that you've got to like regress into being a child, but I think it speaks to like your playfulness, like the lightness about you. It's that
Yeah.
once I've gone into engineering school, like how I saw people view engineers, it's like I kind of like the title, but I don't want to wear it as like a scarlet letter, so to speak, to where people are like, oh, this is what I think engineers are. So yeah, you kind of fit that bill. But then when people are kind of surprised, they're like, oh, you do that? Like I would have never thought. And it's like, yeah, like there's a lot more going on here. And it's like getting to actually um rediscover me and like even add to what it is that I like, whether it's like now going into the fall, I think I might look into like a Latin dance class or any form of dance class to just be like, okay, let me socialize with people, let me learn this skill. I guess maybe it's a different type of trade, but it's like, hey, like being able to cut a rug or being able to like step out on the dance floor and be like, I don't feel like I have two left feet. Like I can be at like a family event or do something that kind of lightens the mood a little bit and it doesn't feel like it's always got to be work, 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 or you just constantly everything's got to be like you can do you can do hard things not always in a hard way. Like you can be able to like see things differently and being able to get those insights have been pretty helpful.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I would encourage you to whatever it is that you do is to continue to put yourself out there and continue to put yourself into uncomfortable situations because personally, man, I mean, with just kind of the political climate stuff that's going on, I'm like, man, you never know what's gonna happen, and
Yeah.
I don't want to get caught like with my pants down, so to speak, right? Like I don't,
Yeah.
I want to be somewhat in a position to where if the grid goes out or this, like I want to be able to be agile and certain, like
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
my,
It's like you're not what do they say? It's like plan for the worst and hope for the best. It's like
yeah, man,
you don't want to stay paranoid, so to speak, but it's like you want to be in a place to where when something happens or when the situation changes, you're not like, what do I do now? You're not like crap. Like I didn't
yeah.
plan for this. It's like you can't plan for everything, but like if you kind of stay open, you can see things that you maybe didn't see before.
Hmm. Yeah, and I forget who says it, and I'm not necessarily paranoid, but the quote of the paranoid survive.
Yeah.
And so preparing for the storm and the three little pigs, right? The one that built
Yeah.
with bricks.
Hmm.
Like, so that type of thinking as far as, if in case I need to carry somebody, in case I need to do this or that, like I don't want to be the one being carried, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to be of service. Should something happen, should something
Yeah.
go down. And it's just kind of thinking about things from that way and just continuing to get the reps in of the uncomfortable things. I mean, I do it consistently, making cold calls or uh just putting myself out there. It's not the most comfortable thing to do,
Yeah.
and but I'm also naturally an extrovert, so it's a little easier, right?
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of respect for the introverts that have to work at it.
Mm.
uh, but it's those, in my opinion, that are actually better than me. Those are the ones that I'm learning from
Mm.
because they've developed that skill way better than I could naturally, right?
Mm.
And so it's like, oh, there's a technique to this. There's this, there's that. And so applying that to maybe just the natural way that I can communicate, it flows better. So it makes me a better person. But like I think that the person that has to work hard to develop that skill
Yeah.
is oftentimes more like is better at that than the naturally talented person, because
Yeah.
they kind of rest on their, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you 100% could be a better, extrovert if you try hard enough than as someone who was naturally at that, good at it.
Yeah. I think I'll do it in parts because it's like sometimes if you, I've stepped out and tried to do a little too much, and then I'm like, "Ooh, okay, like battery's going low. We
Mhm.
got to take a nap and recover a little bit."
Oh, 100%, man. I get that. Like that's how I was on Friday. Like I was like, wow. And I just need to talk to somebody who like isn't gonna tell me off or isn't gonna, give me the
Mm.
runaround, whatever.
Yeah.
So I ended up phoning a friend, and I was like, hey man. And but yeah, we all have that that threshold, you know, like the feeling of underwhelmed, where you're just bored, and then that feeling of overwhelm, and then there's the, you know, the space in between, and we're
Yeah.
somewhere in there. And so just having the self-awareness to know like, okay, cool, like I need a break,
Yeah.
or hey, I need this, I need that. Like I mentioned, you know, for me, it's that solitude. I need some form of solitude, just so I can go back and show up a better person,
Mm.
you know, in front of people, or you know, to my family or to my daughter. And
Yeah.
so having that level of self, just knowing, right,
Yeah.
knowing what it is that you need, your body needs, including rest. You know,
Yeah.
I actually got a Whoop
Oh,
that helps me track my sleep.
yeah.
Uh, I have been known to sacrifice sleep to get the work done that I need to. You know,
Yeah. I guess
yeah,
what's
listening to your
something,
body.
gotcha.
You
What's
can say something.
something, yeah, what's something you're looking forward to with this fall season coming up?
I would say I'm just anything specific. Like I don't know. It's hard for me to put like my heart on what it is that's kind of happening in the world. There's a lot happening, man.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of I have a pulse for the market,
Mm.
right? Like now that I'm in real estate, I can't help but be somewhat in the know as far as like politics goes. I know that
Mm.
you know, it's election year, and there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that's happening. So just learning to kind of not be dragged in the midst of all that. Um, and so, I mean, I'm looking forward to that part of it being over,
Yeah.
honestly, whichever direction it happens to be, because then it's like, all right, cool, you peeled the band-aid off, man. You know, like it is what it is, you
Yeah.
know, and now we can go back to fighting over something else, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know, you know. Um, but yeah, looking forward to that being over. But no, man, I would say that I'm just in a season of my life where there's a lot of things that are happening kind of unexpectedly, but I
Mm.
know that if I continue on my path, the path that I'm on, at least I'm heading in the right direction, right? At least it
Yeah.
feels, and I might veer from time to time, but just continuing to work day by day again, like brick by brick, and just continuing to build, um, and just making sure that I'm attacking the day every day, and that's going to be giving myself grace to know that sometimes that's going to be 150%, and there's times where it's going to be a lot less than that, right? A
Yeah.
fraction of that. And but just continuing to go through, man, and it's just obviously like I have short-term goals, long-term goals.
Mm.
Again, I want to build a team. Um I want to eventually, I want to here in the next few years just start kind of buying rental properties, and you know, start maybe buying some of my time back. But
Mm.
I'm just in a season of my life right now where it's time to grind. You know,
Mm.
it's time to have an aggressive patience,
Mm.
just kind of aggressively going at it, but also being patient, right?
Mm.
Just understanding that it's going to take time,
Yeah.
but that I can shorten that time by making the most out of every day. And so just looking forward to life, man. I mean, just every day it's just um and it's so interesting. It's just you don't have kids yet, right?
No, not yet.
So one of the things that I found really interesting was when my daughter just like out of the blue, she just thanked me, right? She just gave me thanks. She was just like, Dad, I appreciate you. Thank you. And like I wanted to cry, bro. Like even right now, it's kind of getting me emotional because it was just like nowhere, like nothing, right? I didn't buy her anything. We were just in the car, and like I didn't know where that came from, and it was just like out of nowhere, it hit me, and it got me to thinking of like, because being a parent has really gotten me closer to God, right?
Mm.
And what I mean by that is just like that expression. And in that, like I immediately was just like, oh my God, thank you, right? Like I'm just so grateful that you've put me in charge of this little person who
Mm.
just completely has changed my life, you know? And so I just wanted to give her more stuff to be grateful for, right?
Mm.
Like in that moment, like I was just like, oh my God. I did nothing, but here you go. Like, I just wanted to give her the world, right?
Yeah.
And so as a father, I experienced that. And so it made me think of like, man, I just need to be grateful, not so that I can get more from God or that God can give me more, but just like, just in that, again, like, I don't pretend to be like I know God or know his thoughts or understand, even though I think about it a lot.
Mm.
But but just showing gratitude, right? Just being grateful and expressing gratitude towards God for the life that we have. It almost feels like if what I experienced, right, if we're made in God's image and likeness and everything, then it's I almost feel like God would want us to, the more grateful that we are, the more that he's going to give us things to
Right.
be grateful for, right? And so that's kind of the mindset that I've adopted, is just like, I'm just grateful for everything, man. Grateful for the relationships, grateful for the rooms that I've been in, grateful for the dissolution of partnerships.
Mm.
Learned a lot, learning what not to do, learning what to do, learning what it is that like, even in my failed relationship, it's not even, I shouldn't even call it that anymore, right? But just
Mhm.
the relationship that ended up in a divorce.
Mm.
Um, the things that have happened.
Yeah.
We didn't, I think you were familiar with my story of just getting a DUI, and since then just not drinking at all,
Mm.
you know? And at the time it was the worst thing ever. But now in hindsight, I'm like, man, I'm so glad that that happened. I almost wish
Mm.
it would have happened sooner,
Yeah.
right? Because then I would have been sober minded this for this amount of time instead of, like this
Yeah.
just recently. So it's like, yeah, man, just learning to trust God, and just being grateful for even the storm. You got to be
Yeah.
grateful for the rain.
Man, I like that. I feel like you just gave me a lot more to not only be grateful for, but almost like something I can take through the rest of the day and not really need to have like a big long list of plans. But like, even if I just leave this conversation and count the things that I'm grateful for, being able to sit in this air conditioned room with no noise around that I can hear that's like interrupting, or nothing that's really distracting, or nothing that's immediately pulling me to like, you have to do this right now. There's this pressure, there's this stress. It's like that was there years ago, or that was there like a couple months ago, but it's not here now. And like being able to even have like challenges at times, that it's like, oh, okay, like if you focus so much attention on just this isn't what I thought it was going to be, versus like, oh, this is what it is, and what it is giving me something through a lesson, or like just a time. It's like, oh wow, there's a lot more here than what I saw originally. And thank you for that.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. An experience that really changed the direction of my year, potentially my life, but like for sure this year is, I was invited to go serve at an orphanage. And so it was one of my mentors. He has a orphanage down in Ensenada in Mexico, and one of my mentors, Carlos Reyes, invited me, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, man, I'm honored. Like immediately, like just to get the invitation, let me see what it is that I can do, and I can go out there. Man, it ended up being like the best 5 days of my, 2024, because in that I went in with this mentality of like, of just, I'm honored, right?
Mm.
Honored to get the invitation, honored to be here and be able to serve at one of the causes that one of my other mentors does, that he talks so much about.
Yeah.
Honored to be around um, other other believers, other people that um, have a spirit of giving back, right? A spirit of serving. And so just honored to be in that space. And I just took that spirit with me, right? Like just whatever it is that I need, like I sacrifice sleep. I was able to work out, with a buddy of mine,
Mhm.
with a few of them, and was just like, hey man, like let's go, let's push it, right? And kind of kick started off just in my mind, just some of the fitness things and just, hopefully it helped them to just kind of like, hey man, like if you need anything, I got you.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but really serving orphans, widows,
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't realize it until afterwards, but God calls us to serve them.
Mhm.
And I'm like, everything went perfect. Like I couldn't have expected it any better.
Yeah.
I went in with zero expectations, right? So I went in with the mindset of like, I'm just honored to be here.
Mhm.
Um, I'm here to serve, and
Yeah.
I have zero expectations of what this is supposed to look like, right? And in that, uh, like I was able to connect with like with some of the mothers of the kids
Yeah.
that I had, again, just zero expectation. I was literally brought to tears, like me and a couple. I got to shout out Carlos and Sal, because this is all in. That's their brand,
Mhm.
and so I had a moment where I was walking up with both of them, and we just heard the kids just shout in happiness, man. Like we just heard like, "Ah, yeah, right, like." And bro, when I tell you, like, it sounded like little angels, just
Mhm.
like happiness, just joy, bro. Like, and that
Yeah.
sound, like, I was like, oh my God, and Sal just had a moment. He just kind of went off by a tree, and we're all parents, and it was just it's a memory that I'll never forget. But then also just to kind of sit in that, right? Just to
Yeah.
like let that experience, that feeling, that sound, that all of that just kind of like process, marinate, and really think about like, man, there's we have so much, and I don't know how much of it we're actually grateful for, right?
Yeah.
How we're actually cheering like these little kids were, just to have somebody come and visit them, right? And I was like, man, it kind of put things into perspective for me, again, as a dad, but then also just as somebody of like, oftentimes we complain about the things that are happening, and I'm sure they aren't in the most desirable season of their life, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot going on, and to still be able to be grateful and to shout with joy and happiness, and just, it's just it was a lot. It was a lot for me to process at the time. Um, but yeah, man, and that's kind of what it was that I took away from that experience, is just to be wake up every day honored. Um, just approach the day with the mentality of serving,
Mhm.
and don't be so attached to the outcome, to the expectation of what it's supposed to be like or feel like. Um, so yeah, man, that was quite the experience for me.
That that's awesome.
But
It's funny earlier when you ask if I was a dad or not, and I guess usually my knee jerk reaction is like no because I haven't raised any kids or like birthed any kids so to speak, but like having nieces and nephews or even like um being able to appreciate the joy that kids bring even when you walk into like a grocery store and things like that or being any help to anyone that's younger. It's like wow, they really like have a lightness about them, and like whether you're able to help them through a moment of frustration or even be a listening ear or just like a kind face to like acknowledge them, and it's like they acknowledge you back and kind of give you that like sense of there's a little bit more to life no matter what suck you might be going through, or what, like, man, I'm really in my head. And then you can look over to someone that's like this light that has been brought into the world by many means. But I'm glad you shared that experience with me.
Yeah, man. And I think you're very welcome, man. I mean, I should honestly be like, I should be sharing that more, but it was just a very personal experience and a very, but yeah, man, I mean, it made me want to do more of that. Um, and so I can't wait to go back, but then also just to, like, I don't have to be in that setting to serve. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
I can just be present for my nephews, right? You
Yeah,
mentioned, I can be present for my daughter, and I can, like, be where your feet are and serve where it is. Like, you don't have to wait until um, something happens, for you to put on your service hat. Like, you
yeah,
can serve those around you, and but yeah, man, there's so much that we can learn from kids, right? Like, they scrape their knee, and then next minute they're fine. They don't
yeah,
dwell on it, trip on it. It's not like, oh my God, how's this gonna affect me? Like, they just keep it pushing, man.
yeah,
And and they're resilient, man. I know I had to be when I was a kid, but
yeah.
it's definitely, I think there's a lot of different interpretations to that,
And you still are. I mean, it's not like sometimes we grow up and it's like you just get more and more stuff put on you where it's like this belief, this expectation, or these different layers. And I think kind of going back to being childlike is being
Mhm.
able to strip away some of the things that don't really serve you in the now.
No, absolutely, man. I think that's why it's so important to have fun, man. Like, have fun, whatever it is that you're doing. I
Yeah.
have, I have to, like, I have to joke around. I have to, like, poke fun at some things just because personally, I think it's a coping mechanism, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's, it's just something that I have to throw humor in there because sometimes there's things that are very uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm just like, it's a way for me to not feel the discomfort and just to laugh about something, but I do
Right.
that a lot, not just in uncomfortable situations, but also just in where I'm like, it's a little quiet, like, let's spice things up a little bit. And so
Yeah.
it's but I think that's the child in me, like, I just,
Yeah.
hey man, we should have fun, like, we're already here, we might as well do, right? And so
Yeah.
um yeah, not getting in your own way, and just allowing yourself to live, man, and enjoy just the day, enjoy whatever it is, the whole smell the roses. And so it's like, kids will do that, I can see it for sure, like, within my nephews, and then, like, my daughter, and there's just like things that they pay, like, they're just so curious, man. They're just like in awe of, like, you're doing that? What's that? Like, just
Yeah.
approaching life from that curious. I think that's another thing of the, being childlike, is just approaching life just with a curiosity.
Yeah.
What's that? You know? But
Awesome.
yeah, man.
Well, let people know where they can find you if they want to get in touch with you, or be able to work with you, or get following what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm based out of California, right? Northern California. Services include um what just I'm in the wholesale space, realtor, and HVAC, right? That's what it is that I do for work, for money.
Mhm.
But there's a lot more that I do. I stay into fitness, and so anything fitness related, you know, I geek out about that, geek out
Mhm.
about nutrition. On socials, obviously, there's the good old Facebook, good old Instagram.
Mhm.
My handle's at the real Jose Calderon. And it's funny because there's a basketball player
Mm.
Oh, I think he retired, but he used to play for the Cavaliers, the Raptors, and a few other teams. But
Yeah.
they're like, "You're not the real Jose Calderon." I'm like, "Nah, yeah, well, I am. That's just a different one, you know."
Yeah.
Jose Calderon's a pretty common name. Come to
Yeah.
find out, he even has my middle name. So I'm like, man, I can't even throw the middle name in there. But yeah, Jose Manuel Calderon
Yeah.
is full name. It's actually Jose Manuel Calderon Gomez because,
Mm.
I was born, or I got my mom's maiden name thrown in
Mm.
there. So it's what it has on my birth certificate. But yeah, just the real dot Jose Calderon on IG. I believe it's the same thing on TikTok. I'm not
Mm.
really too active on there, but I post a lot of the things that I do, fitness related, real estate related, expanding our team here in the Central Valley. So I post that on the socials, um, and yeah, same thing, Facebook, and yeah, just I could be reached there. I need to have a little bit more of a presence when it comes to like websites and all that fun stuff, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I would say IG is probably the best way to reach me. And I'm in the direct messages. So
Yeah. I think that's great. And also, as you build your team out, you'll attract the people that you need to kind of fill the gaps where in the things you're not able to do. Because otherwise, it's like, why try and stretch yourself out so thin, trying to do everything?
yeah, absolutely, man. I think it's hard to let go. It's hard to delegate. It's hard to be I think it's hard to be a good leader, you know?
Yeah.
Anybody could lead a team, anybody could own a business, but can you lead a good business? Can you
Yeah.
your employees happy? Are your employees making money,
Yeah.
right? You might be having a successful business, but are the people on your team happy? Are they making money? Or are you the only
Yeah.
one that's, you know, um, do you have the biggest piece there? It's just there's a lot that goes to that. And I just want to make sure that as I'm growing a team and doing that, that I'm also somebody worth following. Right.
Right.
So
Right. I think
hopefully,
that 10x is easier than 2x book will definitely help you with that because there's a good example in there about a lady that got started with real estate and the Keller Williams group. And it's
Mhm.
going from trying to help her husband as a getting into real estate to help kind of with the bills because I think he started a business and that wasn't going as well. They're getting ready to declare bankruptcy, and he was
Oh
like, "Hey,
wow.
if you could get into this real estate thing, maybe take a class and like make a sale or something here and there that would kind of help us out on the family front." And she went from I think selling like or making maybe like a $3,000 commission on her first sale to like 10, 15 years later, netting at least like 15 million easily.
Oh
And
my God.
one of the things that, as he
Netting?
describes it, yeah,
Oh,
as she describes it, it's like the way that she got better was kind of going against some of the advice people were trying to give her. But in thinking
mm,
of that 10x model, it's like as she every time she would hire somebody as she decided to go out on her own team and kind of start her franchise I'm not sure if that's how that works with the different offices that you can have on your own as a realtor but like
I'm not sure.
anytime she would hire an assistant it would be someone that could do something that she couldn't do but something that it was that they were good at and something that they liked to where they could be effective and it's like they could put all their attention into that one thing and each time that she did that the business doubled in size so it's like you hire somebody and like profits are doubling and like obviously the more work you get the more people you need to be able to staff it and some people maybe had the idea of like no you don't want a big team because then that dilutes the how many people you can service and it's like you're fighting for resources but it's going in the opposite direction kind of really nailing down and focusing on what she needed to focus on it was like no I seem to be having better results than the sage wisdom so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that this year has been, it's revealing to me, uh, it's been revealed to me just some of the people who you want to be learning from and who you don't,
Yeah.
right? Because you can learn from just about anything, especially on the internet, on socials, like everyone's an expert, right?
Yeah.
But really taking the time to figure out, I mean, to vet, right? Vet
Yeah.
who it is that you're learning from. I mean, we take the time to, for school, for university, for college, right? Like, I want to go to this school? Do I like, do our, right? Do I want to go to a private school? Do I want to go to a faith-based school? Whatever, right? Like,
Right. Right.
you do a vetting process, but I don't think we do that enough with our social, with our friends, with or even the content that we're consuming online, you
Yeah.
know?
It's like it sounds good enough.
Yeah, you're just like, "Well, everything sounds good, right?"
Yeah.
You're getting these things and like, especially if it's prepackaged in a way that, but what are commercials, And there's so many commercials for things that probably aren't good for us, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's like that's kind of what social media has kind of become, is just a consistent ad generating freaking content, and so it's
Yeah.
like it's find people who you can actually learn from. Well, again, you can learn from anybody, but just taking the time to kind of vet them and be like, hey, is this somebody whose life I want to, um like, do they have a good relationship with their wife? Do they,
Mm.
if they're married, or do their kids talk to them? Do
Yeah.
they, like, do their employees think highly of them? You
Right.
know,
Right.
whatever the case may be. And so, really taking the time to filter out who it is that you are going to learn from, whether it's coaching, whatever. I think the line has just been something where it's like, it's almost like you have an immediate level of trust, right? Like, I just
Yeah.
immediately trust you. I immediately trust Korshan,
Mhm.
BK. Barry, I'm like, dude, they're more Barry, whatever. You keep it, keep it coming. And just like EL, like, I'll just, Tony, man, I don't think I've met Tony Color yet, but that guy, I'm just like, man, just I can I can just relate to him on a different level, man. But
Yeah.
and so it's now I can kind of, like, silence the noise of everything else and everybody else, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I just want to learn from these guys, right? The
Mhm.
people who have the wisdom, the experience, and and that have gone through the ringer and have, you know f- fought a fight, have lived on the side of maybe not walking with God, and
Mhm.
that experience, and it's hard for me to trust somebody who I haven't seen bleed, or
Yeah.
who doesn't walk with a limp, or doesn't
Mhm.
have a few scars, like.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the beauty of like just taking the time to really vet the people who it is that you're going to be spending time with,
Right.
so, um but yeah, I mean, hopefully, like, something that was said on here was, it touched somebody in a way, or, hopefully it impacted them. I know I've enjoyed this conversation, man. I was really looking forward to it. Didn't know what to expect, but hopefully it, something good came out of it. I know it served me, man. I appreciate you. And yeah, anything that I can do, I mentioned what it is that I do for work, but I stay heavy into fitness. I ran my first marathon this year,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, so there's a lot that I can uh, relate with people to, and so yeah, I mean, I'm involved in a lot more, but on those things, like anything that I can help with, real estate
Yeah.
in Northern California, among other things, just more than happy to be of assistance in any way that I can.
Awesome. And from the first question I asked you, I always like to end with this one. Are you still who you said you were?
Am I still who I said I was? Um, and I said that I was a servant, right? Am I still now who it is that I say I am? Yeah, I think so. I mean, because there's a bunch of different identities or different like hats that I can wear. And but I think at the end of the day, I'm just trying to be I think I'm trying to reach that reach that point of where I'm told, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's just what it is that I'm trying to do. Again, I do different things for work, different things for, right, wear different hats as a dad, as a son, as a significant other, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to serve, and hopefully, I can be a good example of that.
Yeah.
And I
Awesome.
can continue to.
Yeah. I think you can. Well, let's get you out of the sun a little bit. I see it's warming up there in Cali.
Oh, a little
And
bit, yeah.
thank you again for doing this. It was a pleasure to talk to you in this setting and to share a little bit of your life with the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. No, thank you for having me. And looking forward to to definitely doing more and having more conversations like this, man, because it really helps out, helps me. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited for you to get back into this. I know you said that you took a pause.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited for you to get back into it. And same thing for you, man. Anything that I can do for you, right? You have my information, my phone number. Now that we know each other a little bit better, I'm sure
Right.
that there's areas in which, if there's a Venn diagram of Jose and Asher, there's a few things in there I'm sure that, we can come together on. So
For
happy to
sure.
be here. Yeah.
Thank you again. Definitely the fitness piece. And when you mentioned wholesaling, I was like, that was on my that was on my board at one point. I might look into that direction, but now I have another resource to kind of point to or go to consult with.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I love it, bro. It's changed my life, honestly. Um, I mean, just real estate in just that area has, but I would say wholesaling specifically, it's there's a lot of people who you could learn from. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Mhm.
And I've paid a lot of money, and I've also experienced a lot of I have a lot of different I have a lot of experience in that space.
Mhm.
So yeah, any questions that you have, based on my experience, I can, tell you, hey, this works, this doesn't, or this is this way.
Right.
And yeah, dude, let's do it. Because if you're curious about it, right? Back to being a little child,
Yeah.
and there's something there for you, right? If nothing else, at least to kind of like eliminate some options, or like, well, I don't really like that piece of it. I like this one though. And then, you know,
Yeah.
going in that direction of the stuff that works. So, but yeah, man,
Awesome.
reach out anytime, bro.
Will do.